Good morning, church family. So I have to share a small story that I thought was funny this morning. As you know, we try to do certain things here for helping out with the live stream cameras. One of those is dimming the lights in the auditorium for various reasons. And I sit down as we're getting started with worship, and I look over at my wife, and I'm like, "Hey, you look good in this light." And I was like, "Oh, you're not supposed to look good." No, then I'm trying to backtrack because it was my trigger realizing the lights were still too bright, and then I was dissing how my wife looked all of a sudden. So that's my morning so far. Hope everyone else's is going better because I dug myself a hole, and now I'm climbing out as slowly as I can. But I tell you, for the past several weeks, we've been in this series talking about finding freedom from the various things that strive to enslave us. And let's be honest, there are a lot of things that try to enslave us. The basis of this series is on a scripture from Galatians chapter 5, verse 1 that says, "It is for freedom that Christ has set us free. Stand firm then, and do not let yourselves be burdened again by a yoke of slavery." We have been set free. And this is wonderful news because we are enslaved to so many things. Christ has called us to freedom. But the thing is, sometimes we don't even know that we're enslaved to some things. Let me illustrate this by starting with a simple question. Raise your hand if you have a social media account. Any social media account, yeah? I would bet that most of you that raised your hand are not aware of the fact that you have been enslaved to that account. I'm just curious now for demographics and how this works because this will play in a little bit. How many of you have a Facebook? How many of you have Twitter? All right, that's what I figured. The few and the proud. All right. How many of you have Instagram? It's kind of fun watching the generational move on this. This is great. How many of you have TikTok? Yeah, okay. Snapchat or whatever. Here's the thing. Okay, I'm going to stop there. Here's the thing. You may have a dislike or a hate for one of the social media saying, well, this one's bad, this one's better, things like that. I'm just going to let you in on a little secret. All social media is not good. Doesn't matter which one. They all have their bad stuff. And so it really doesn't matter. We can point our fingers to certain things, but the reality is we get sucked in to so many things in this life that really don't fully matter. I actually miss MySpace. That's how retro I am, all right? Anyway, that's before Facebook. MySpace was great, partly because I loved that I could have my own music whenever you visited my page, like I could have my own theme song. I really want, I'm a baseball fan, I really want whenever I walk up to have walk-up music to preaching. It's frowned upon, especially the choices that I would make for my walk-up music in a church setting. So Return of the Mac doesn't seem to go very well in this. But I remember when Facebook was started. Facebook was started in 2004 by a sophomore at Harvard University, which is just mind-blowing in and of itself. And it was originally meant for you to keep up with the people that you like. It was originally meant for that. You know what it's turned into? Is to compare yourself to the people that you don't like now, right? I mean, the like button, whenever that came about 6 years after the invention of Facebook, they turned this like button, and that has transformed our world, and not for the better. See, the thing is, it's not enough for us to just post pictures of our food, how good we might look, or where we've been. Now we post those pictures, and we wait for validation from other people to like our food, how good we look, and where we've been. And that's not even enough for us, that if we don't get enough likes according to our thinking of how many likes we might need, we look at other friends who have the same kind of food, who look similar, and who have been to the same kind of places, and we see how many likes they've got to see what we are in comparison. And a lot of us put our whole self-worth based upon what others like or don't. And that's not just a social media problem, that is a human problem. That we put so much of our self-worth into things like these likes and dislikes. And the sad thing is, we tie our significance in this world to those comparisons. When we do this, we prove that we're enslaved to comparisons. We need to be free from it. We need to be free from comparison, but the thing is, every one of us wants to be dash ER. Every one of us wants to be What I mean by that is we want to be richer. We want to be happier. We want to be stronger. We want to be smarter. We want to be taller. Rusty, is he here this morning? I know that's like... Hey, would you stand up, Rusty? Sorry. He's standing in the back for those that... Okay, anyway. We want to be whatever, right? We just want to be a little bit more I am actually okay with whatever you have. Here's the thing that I've realized within my own life, especially whenever I didn't realize that how much of a struggle this was for me, is I am good with whatever you have. I just want a little bit more So you have money, I want to be richer. You have good looks, I just want to be prettier. Yeah. But here's the thing, you may be good, I don't even want to be great, I just want to be gooder. Because I know that I may not be great, I just want to be more than you. And we do this in so many ways, and I'm saying it as a negative, but we also do this in the positive to make us feel better, right? So we look at some people over here on our right that are going to be more than we are, but we look to the people on our left that are dumber, that are slower, that are shorter, you name the and we begin to feel better about ourselves. Because of all these people, I'm pointing over here, I don't mean you guys. Like, you guys are great, all right? But the whole thing is we focus on them or on these others to help figure out where we fit in this world. And the thing is, we look to our left, we look to our right to find our own significance, but there is no win in the comparison game. In fact, it's a trap that we fall into so easily. Social media has proliferated this trap for us, but we do it whether we have social media or not. We fall into this trap of comparison. The comparison game is a mixture of jealousy and pride, neither of which are things that are spoken highly upon in Scripture. In fact, pride is often mentioned multiple times with sin. But this idea of jealousy, we don't talk about tons. Jealousy is just as problematic. In fact, there's a passage in Proverbs 14, verse 30, that says, nope, that doesn't seem right. But it says, envy rots the bones. Jealousy, envy, there is no win in comparison. It will eat you alive. That's what it does. There's so many things that are wrong with it. So how do we avoid this comparison game? How do we avoid wanting more than anyone else? Solomon has a thought or two for us that we're going to focus on this morning. He wrote these thoughts later on in his life. After all was said and done, whenever he's coming near the end of his life, he writes the book of Ecclesiastes for his search for meaning. But the thing that you need to realize about Solomon is he had more than you will ever have. He was smarter than you will ever be, and he did more than you will ever do. How's that for comparison? You feeling great about yourself right now? But that's Solomon. Everything that we know about Solomon, he is more than I could ever hope or dream. He is richer, he is smarter, like the Lord granted him the more smarts than anyone else before or after, Scripture says. He is wiser, he's all the things. He's more So, check out in his search for significance, his search for meaning in this world, check out one of the things he noticed in Ecclesiastes 4, verse 4. He says, then I observed that most people are motivated to success because they envy their neighbors. I don't think that he's wrong. He says what drives most people is comparison. We compare ourselves to the Joneses. Whoever the Joneses are, it doesn't matter who they are. I knew some Joneses in the past, and they're great people, wonderful people. We always kind of, keeping up with the Joneses is a negative thing. Sometimes it's an all right thing if your name's Jones. But keeping up with the Joneses has caused so many problems within us. He says it's their comparison, it's their envy, their desire to have more. He saw people determining where they were based upon where everyone else was. This is what we still do. Every one of us wants to know that we're normal. That what we do, how we act in this life is normal. So we look at other people, are they doing the same things? And if they're not, then we kind of change our behavior so that we fit the normal. I say normal is highly overrated. There's this whole stretch of weirdos that is probably what more God desires than what we have understood as normal. But in all reality, we look to people left and right of us and say, do I fit? Do I have meaning? Do I have significance? And Solomon says people are motivated because they're looking at other people and they're jealous of it. They're envious of other people. And this is something that obviously still happens today. We continue in this world. We're encouraged to seize the day in this dog-eat-dog, cutthroat kind of world, to be more. But he says, this is what motivates people. Continue on, though. But this, too, is meaningless. Like chasing the wind. Chasing the wind means that there's no finish line. You'll never catch the wind. You don't know if it's going to stop. This was a much better illustration, I think, whenever I lived in West Texas and Oklahoma Panhandle, because the wind never stops there. So if you chase the wind, it's a losing game. You're not going to catch it. But we can get that here, right? We can understand that concept, that it's a futile thing to try to chase the wind. When we compare ourselves to others, when we want to be more, we feel like we have to be more in order to be satisfied, then we will never find satisfaction. Because comparison is a moving target. It is always moving. We will never find lasting satisfaction when we are simply comparing ourselves to others to find our meaning and significance in this life. It's just how it works, and it's a brutal trap that has a hold on so many hearts in our lives. I was going to, Neil leads humble thyself before this sermon. I'm like, man, that takes out like one of my illustrations, because I was going to talk about, wearing the bow tie and looking good. And I'm like, well, but I'm going to talk about it anyway. So I noticed like the two guys, we don't wear bow ties very often anymore, right? Most guys don't wear ties as much as we used to anymore, but I think the bow tie is one of those things that should not be lost. I love the look, and both Ryan and Scott aren't here this morning, two other guys that would wear the bow tie with me, but there's part of me that, I'm not going to lie, I have to like train my mind to not walk in going, I look good this morning. Because there's something about when you dress up, you look good, you feel good with it. And I don't think that's the problem. I literally do have to stop myself of saying, Mitch, you know it, but we don't have to flaunt it. You don't have to make a thing about it, because that's when we're crossing into dangerous territory. That's whenever we're having problems. And you may be looking at me going, yeah, you are lying to yourself, sir. That may be the case, but no one asked you anyway, so just hold it, keep it to yourself. The thing is, we all struggle with this thing called comparison. And it's like chasing the wind. So what do? Is it better just to do nothing, to have no ambition, to not try to get any better? Solomon has an answer. Keep going with him. He says, fools fold their idle hands, leading them to ruin. That's a problem. Said, no, it's not about just stop having any ambition, stop striving for anything else, because then you'll be a fool and it's going to lead to ruin. And so if I'm not supposed to seek more than others, and I'm not supposed to do nothing, then what is it that I'm supposed to do? Here's Solomon's advice. Better one handful with tranquility than two handfuls with toil and chasing after the wind. Can I just call the invitation right now? Everyone got that, right? I tell you, Solomon just spoken like a true sage. Wonderful words, they sound beautiful, but every time I look at it, I kind of scratch my head saying, what? What did you just tell me? Better one handful with tranquility than two handfuls with toil and chasing after the wind. What does that have to do with my envy? What in the world is going on here? Well, what he's saying is it is better to have one handful of what you were designed to do than two handfuls of you striving to get everything that you can. One handful of what God intended for you. We don't use this word tranquility that often, but it's a tie to satisfaction, to contentment. But really, in context here, this word tranquility is meant to be at peace with who you are. It's meant to be at peace with who God made you to be. So the Hebrew imagery here, because images were a big deal to the Hebrews, okay? They loved to give word pictures. And the picture here, it is better to have one hand open toward God than to have two fists clenched around me. One hand open toward God or two fists. Because that one hand open to God is open to receive God's blessing. And it's really hard to receive a blessing when both fists are clenched. It's really hard. Try it sometime. It doesn't work. And in fact, if you clench both your fists, other people don't really want to give you much of a blessing, do they? I mean, just look at that. They're not ready for a blessing. But one hand open, it's a different picture. And there's something beautiful that happens there when we are ready to receive a blessing. See, this world does not view it this way, though. This world, that is a very foreign concept to this world. This world wants us to live with our fists clenched around everything that we have. That it is mine, it's my right. Heard that language recently, haven't you? We're all concerned about our rights. This is a fist clenched idea. And I'm not just talking about people on the left. I'm talking about people on the right as well, politically. That it is my right, that Second Amendment. It's my right. And we hold on to these rights and we cling to them. And we put up our fists ready for the fight for anyone that might want to take that right away. I'm not saying we shouldn't fight for rights. But the thing is, it's very different to live a life with one hand open than it is both hands full of toil and strife. There's no peace, no tranquility, no quietness when your fists are clenched, wanting more and more and more, grasping for more and more. Solomon continues. He says, I observed yet another example of something meaningless under the sun. This is the case of a man who is all alone, without a child or a brother, yet who works hard to gain as much wealth as he can. But then he asks himself, who am I working for? Why am I giving up so much pleasure now? It is all so meaningless and depressing. So here's a guy who has worked hard his entire life, but he was working all alone. No one to leave his wealth to. And so he stops finally and he asks himself, who am I doing this for? What's the point of all this? Why am I giving up pleasure now for something no one else can actually enjoy later? He's asking himself, what is driving him? And honestly, this is a question all of us need to ask. What is it that is driving you? What is it that motivates you? Do you wear the bow tie so that other people can look at you and say, oh, Mitch, you look good? If that's my motivation, I'm not in some good place. What motivates you? Do you post something on your social media so that other people can go, oh, look at what you did? What is it that motivates you? What is calling the shots in your life? Because whatever motivates you is going to be what controls you. And what controls you, if it's not God, if it's anything other than Christ, then it's not taking you to the right place. What is it that drives me? In reality, what drives most humans is a search for meaning, a search for significance in this world. I want to know that what I'm doing and who I am and the time and place that I occupy for a small time and space is meaningful and it has purpose. We are searching for significance. And you see, at its core, comparison is a search for significance. At its core, that's exactly what we're doing. We're searching to see how we measure up in this world. We're searching for our own personal significance. So we look to the people to our right, we look to the people to our left, and we evaluate, are we good enough in our situation, in our time, in our place, so that we can feel that we are significant. And the funny thing is, I've done several funerals, but I have never done a funeral where I've said, well, this person, the deceased here, to their right was this person that was richer, this person that was smarter, this person that was prettier, this person that was all the things, taller. But to their left, and pointing out to the crowd, this family member was shorter, this family member was dumber, this one was more, whatever. I've never done that at a funeral to say this person's life is significant because they were better than these people, but they were still striving for these people. You realize how stupid that game is? Yet we play it all the time. We seek it from other people. We want significance from other people. We want this comparison to work. But the thing is, if we're using that kind of mentality, we're always going to fall short. Always going to fall short because there is always someone smarter, prettier, faster, funnier, richer, more popular, or whatever. And if you allow yourself to buy in to the way the world has its values, and you use comparison as the standard, you're going to feel pretty lousy about yourself. More often than not. Because you just don't compare. As good as you might be, you can always look at someone gooder. You just don't compare. But there's some good news for us. The good news is that's the world's way of doing things, and it makes us feel lousy. But God has a different way to give us significance, and God has a different way for us to have meaning. And it's not the same as the world's. Consider the story of the prophet prophet Samuel, whenever he is going to anoint a new king that would eventually be King David. So Samuel is told to go to the house of Jesse. Jesse has 8 sons. One of the sons is going to be the next king. So go be ready to anoint him. So Jesse knows that Samuel's coming, and he gathers his sons, 7 of them, because someone has to be left out in the field with the livestock. And no one, he leaves his youngest. No one's going to pick the youngest to be king. Like, that's just not how things work. So what happens whenever all the sons are lined up, the eldest steps forward in 1 Samuel 16, 6-7. When they arrived, Samuel took one look at Eliab and thought, surely this is the Lord's anointed. Notice he takes one look at him. He bases his whole understanding of the Lord's anointed upon what he sees. In comparison, what he sees, maybe he's tall, he's handsome, he's built. I don't know what's going on. What Samuel sees whenever he sees him, this is a king. But the Lord said to Samuel. It's always a line in Scripture that I'd never want, but the Lord said to Mitch. But I get that more often than I care for. But the Lord said to Samuel, don't judge by his appearance or height, for I have rejected him. It doesn't mean he doesn't want him. He just says he is not the chosen one. The Lord doesn't see things the way you see them. People judge by outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. God looks at the heart. Try to put that on a Facebook post. Try to take a picture of that for your Instagram. Try to do a little TikTok dance about that. It's going to be difficult, right? Because this world, that's not how we function. This world, we see the outward appearance, and we make judgment according to that, and we compare according to that. But God says, hey, look, I'm not even worried about the outward appearance. Whenever I'm judging someone for significance in this world, I didn't slap skin on the person and give them a certain height and a certain color, pigmentation of skin, and nearsighted, farsighted, any of those things, so that that would be their significance in this world. That they could look in the mirror and say, this is how I fit because God made me to look this way. No. God put His Spirit in every one of you, in every one of us. He breathed the breath of life into us. And whenever God is looking at us and saying, you want to know what makes you significant? Is whenever I look at you, can I see my reflection? When I look at you, can I see the image that I put within you still? Or have you tried to mask it? Have you tried to put makeup over it? Have you tried to go with what the world says? Here's the standard of beauty. Here's the standard of what it looks like to be successful. Here's this kind of standard, and God's looking at this saying, no, that is not what the standard should be. Because God looks at the heart. In fact, this probably leads to the biggest problem with comparison. Comparison uses the wrong reference point. That point is not just some outward appearance. It's not what beauty magazines are going to say, here's what beauty is. You know, there is that push every now and again to have more normal people in comparison with beauty. I only think that works. One of my favorites is during the Olympics. One of the greatest ideas that I think would enhance the Olympics is you have, your Usain Bolts, or you have your, these Olympians doing the thing, and they need to have like a normal average Joe. Joe, I'm going to pick on your name just because that works. And here's Joe trying to do the pole vault, to see what a normal person would do with a pole vault, and it's like we're going to go kill ourselves with this big old pole, and then we can have that as a comparison of how amazing they are in the Olympics. But that feeds the problem, right? We want the comparison. We want to know how it compares, and it's the wrong reference point. It's not the outward appearance. It's not even some of the things that we think this world gives us. In fact, comparison's wrong reference point is that I use me as the reference point. See, whenever I play the comparison game, I'm not usually worried about how one person compares to another person. Whenever I'm talking about significance for my own life, I'm wondering how I compare to others. And we play this game in church, right? Who's the most holy person among us? And you may have your thoughts of who it is. I mean, we could name some names that are in this auditorium right now that, these are godly saints for us, and we're the ones that we look up to. But I would imagine that every one of them that we look up to is probably going to say, yeah, look here, I'm pretty messed up and I'm pretty flawed. But we want that comparison. I want the person to look up to, and then I can at least point over to someone else saying, well, at least I'm not as bad as them. I'm better than them. It's kind of like the mentality, you don't have to be faster than a bear, you just have to be faster than your friend. And I just know that I'm faster, and he'll take out that person. That's fine. That's not how heaven works. Heaven isn't, or hell for that matter. It doesn't just pick off the slow ones. It picks off the ones whose hearts are not right. Because God looks at the heart, but we look at ourselves. We're using the wrong reference point when we are comparing, and it enslaves us so quick and so harsh. And I think that is what Solomon is getting at whenever he says it is better to live with one hand open. It's this recognition that I've been created in the image of God. I've been given a plan and a purpose. I've been given significance. And I can do with that as I might will. I can hold on to it and grasp for a little bit more and say, look at me. Or I can keep that one hand open and say, dude, guys, look at God. Look at what God has done in this broken vessel, in this messed up person that we know as Mitch Wiggins. Look at what God has done. Because I can't take credit for something that I have received. I can't compare myself to you out of something that I've received. When my hand is open to the Lord, it changes everything about me. But maybe you've been holding on so long and finding your own reference point in the comparison trap that you don't even see it in your own life. And I pray that God opens your eyes, helps you to see what He sees whenever He looks at you. It may be a harsh judgment at first. He may see someone that's striving way too hard and has two fists full of turmoil. But I believe God, in His gentleness, will begin to say, but when you open one hand to me, you are perfect the way that I created you. When you lean into the gifts that God has given you, the blessings that He has poured upon you, you begin to find your significance in something other than yourself. So this morning, if you need to live with one hand open, maybe you need a little help in that process, maybe you just need the prayers, maybe you need to confess that you've been comparing for way too long and you want to get out of that trap. Well, we welcome you to make that confession publicly or to make that confession privately. Whatever you might need, the elders and ministers will surround this auditorium here. If you need one of us or anyone else in this congregation, let it be known as we stand and sing together.